Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Cordner, Chief Marketing Officer of Amplix. This is the Amplitude of Tech podcast. Thanks for joining us. Today, my guest is Jared Ruth. He runs an agency called RipCurrent Agency. It's a marketing agency that leverages AI for their clients to help them build their brands and go to market. This was a super interesting conversation. He's a really sharp guy. He's got a lot of hands-on practical experience with AI. He also comes from the technology provider space. He gave us a lot of context on how AI is being used today, how it's going to be used in the future. And we had a great conversation. If you're a technology leader that wants to learn about AI applications and how they can better collaborate with marketing, or if you are a marketer, or if you're just someone who's interested in AI and the implications that it may have on society, I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. Thanks for joining us. All right, Jared Ruth, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Shawn. Appreciate the opportunity.
I appreciate you spending some time with me. It's been a while since we connected. We go back, I guess, maybe 4 or 5 years. We worked on a couple of projects together when I had my branding agency and you were working with one of the companies that was a client of ours. We were doing a pretty large rebrand and we worked with you on that. And you became one of my favorite people in the industry, just such a nice, chill California guy, very smart, very sharp. And your career has kind of taken a bit of a different turn. So let me just turn it over to you real quick. Let everyone know, where you've come from and where you're at today.
Well, appreciate that, Shawn. The feeling is absolutely mutual, and the flattery will get you everywhere. So thank you for that. So, so it's been a wild journey. I spent 25 years-ish in corporate America, ranging from, tech and engineering all the way to operations. And most recent stint in the large service provider areas were related to marketing and then doing product launches and things for emerging technologies on the managed services side. So yeah, pretty, various background in different areas, kind of shifting all over the place. And maybe I attribute it a little bit to getting bored easily, but most recently, it's been a really cool journey because I stepped out of that corporate environment out on my own. So definitely a little scary, to be honest. And you've known what that looks like. But it has been just such an incredible eye opener for me, going from having massive budgets and, a team and all that to really being able to build and craft on my own and relearn, honestly, a lot of things that I had forgotten over time. And you get so busy with PowerPoint presentations and emails and meetings and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden you're just sort of left with, okay, what do I know? How can I contribute value? And then, initially you're feeling like, oh boy, this is going to be tough. All of a sudden realizing that there's a ton of value that you can contribute and bring to the market, which is really cool and exciting. So,
yeah, I think that's really relatable. It's worth saying that you were at one of the largest technology, telecom service providers out there, very, very big, recognizable name, and you had a very important role there. And then you worked overseeing marketing for one of their subsidiaries, which is a very cool and growing company in itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the bigger the company, the more complex your day gets. There's more things that you have to talk about, and more people that you have to engage with, more stakeholders that you have to answer to, and it's hard to get anything done aside from meetings, right? And meetings and email doesn't really work, but it does feel that way sometimes. And our audience is mostly technology leaders in the IT and the CX space, but I'm sure that's very relatable too, because the bigger the organization, the more complexity in their technology ecosystem that they have to manage, the more stakeholders that they have to answer to, which is some of the things that I want to get into today, actually. And I just want to assure the audience before we go any further here that even though this is two marketing guys, we're going to try to thread the needle between marketing and technology and not talk too much about the things that really excite us, the brand stuff and the marketing talk. So we'll try to keep it on the technology side, but I'm sure some of it's going to leak in because, as I'm fond of saying in our 9 episodes, and I've probably said it about 15 times, I'm a hammer and everything looks like a nail to me, right? So I look at everything through a marketer's lens, and I'm sure you do too. But
Yep.
Start there, right? So, just briefly, what is your current agency that you started? It's RipCurrent Agency, and you are deploying an interesting use case for AI in the marketing space. So, just talk to me a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So, and kind of following up on what you just said there too, what I realized that there is, all this stuff is necessary that we do every day. I'm not saying that having meetings and emails isn't necessary. It's extremely important. But what I found out when I left is that, why we had access to all these tools and platforms and all these things that we use from an enterprise perspective for marketing. That's not the case, obviously, with most Main Street businesses, smaller businesses, medium-sized businesses, even. And it was interesting because as a service provider, we enabled a lot of our partners in the channel with these types of platforms. Um, and I was interfacing with them every day, but I guess I didn't realize to what extent maybe they didn't totally leverage those, or in some ways even know how to use them. And so, when I started a Rip Current, my real mission was to show people, you know, that marketing, while, I always say, sometimes to people, marketing sucks because it seems to just like pull everything out of everywhere, and money and, top line revenue and everything. But it can be very complicated and challenging and frustrating. I think, especially if you're a business owner, you're hearing these things, you're getting emails every day about, well, your SEO isn't optimized. You can do more with advertising. You can do more with this. And so my intention in creating Rip Current was to cut through all that noise and just help people understand, okay, here's the fundamentals of what you need to do to market your business. And it's actually not that hard, and it's not that expensive. So I find myself telling people a lot of times when I'm getting in talking to them, here's a bunch of stuff you don't need to do. Here's the emails you don't have to pay attention to, because a lot of these are just going to waste your time, right? So that's been really cool, helping these smaller companies cut through the noise, cut through all the things they're hearing, and get back to the basics of marketing, and using AI agents as a major piece of that to help them streamline their daily operations and get the information they need to market effectively.
Yeah, I think one of the use cases for AI in the marketing space right now that I'm most excited about is um, personalization and predictive analytics, right? Because to your point, business owners and the technology leaders that are listening to this, they're inundated with emails. I get them all day, um, and these companies are just constantly barraging you on the phone and text messages and emails, and you don't know what to respond to, and you really don't end up responding to anything. But sometimes there is a product market fit there that you do want to explore. I've definitely I've responded to some cold calls. I just had a meeting yesterday with a company that's in the cybersecurity space, a media company, and looking at maybe doing some advertising with them. And I'm pretty sure that the email that the guy sent me that I responded to was an AI driven email, right? But the reason that I responded to it was because it was so specific to something that I had going on.
Mm,
And he found that through publicly available information. He's not snooping on me or anything, right? But the AI pulled it in, it recognized a signal, it pulled it in, it crafted a message that was speaking specifically to my intent and my interest. And it presented the information in a way that was quickly consumable, concise, and value forward. And so I responded to it. And I think that's a great use case for AI. Thoughts on that? And, what are some of the other great use cases for AI in marketing?
yeah, totally agree. And what's so cool is, I mean, just scratching the surface when we talk about email campaigns and A&B testing and web personalization and all that stuff. But to your point, AI is a great way to put those messages out in front of people like yourself. But it still takes a human behind that, right? There still has to be that connected tissue. So AI might have gotten you to respond and said, "Hey, this resonates with me," but it still takes a human to follow up and get you interested enough to say, hey, I want to talk to you. And that's where I think, we run into this, relationship with AI where we need to be very careful about making sure that the AI is maybe leading that conversation, but not expecting AI to take over everything, right? And obviously, that's different depending on the use case. And so I hope we have time to dig into a few of these because there's certain things that are very transactional, right? And you can use that, and people actually appreciate the fact that you can go in, you don't have to talk to anybody, you can get an order in, see those things. But there's other um, scenarios and many scenarios where people very much expect to still talk to a human. They want that interaction. I have small customers where they'll use AI to start the conversation or provide information about the business. And they'll tell me all the time, Jared, hey, this is really cool. Like, this is saving me so much time. And thank you. And, all that good stuff. But I'm like, that's true, but also when they come into your store and they're giving you a five-star review because of the way your employees treated them, that's not my AI. I wish I could say it was. It's not. It's you guys and your employees. So I can get people there. We can, have that front end. But if they go into your store or they go into your business, they go into wherever and get treated terribly, AI is not going to fix that necessarily. So yeah, so it's there's this dichotomy between the two that's really critical to understand, and I think it's important. So
Yeah, from a messaging perspective and from a personalization perspective, it can help your company be the signal through the noise, which is ultimately what marketing is about, right? It's trying to understand what the market needs and what you deliver really well and what maybe your competition is failing to deliver. And if you can zero in on that and communicate that in an effective way, you'll start to stand out. There are obviously more tactical things that need to be considered to do that, right? But AI can definitely help you with that. But to your point about keeping the human in the loop and not from the perspective of to check the AI, but from the perspective of putting authenticity forward and putting your people forward, right? Your brand is partly your business strategy, but it's also partly the culture and the people that you have and the culture that those people foster or have created. So that's almost as important as the business strategy, right? Or that can become the business strategy. And you have to be careful letting AI take over too much of those kind of interactions because you lose that authenticity, you lose that connection, and really you start to erode the brand. That culture is so important, and AI really cannot put culture forward. And I think we see this in the contact center space quite a bit. A
sure,
lot of people start wading into AI in CX because they see it as an opportunity to create cost savings, reduce labor costs, or deflect transactional calls and push those calls off on the AI so that the reps can focus on more complex calls, and that's very valuable, right? But you also have to think about why is that person calling? What emotional state is that person in? What are they trying to accomplish? What do you need them to accomplish? How can that interaction reinforce the brand and the culture, but also what are the potential risks of introducing AI at a moment that is, somebody is emotionally fragile? Maybe it's a medical situation, right? Or a legal situation. You have to be careful with these kind of things, or someone's already amped up because they're just so angry at your company because of something that happened. You have to be careful about putting the AI too far forward there, right?
yeah, no, I you said a couple words there which are perfect, and after years of working with you, I'm not surprised because you're a you're a brand guy. And, emotion is a big one, right? And then the second word that you said there was moment. Okay. So when we think about AI, especially as it relates to brand, and that's going back to that employee example I just gave, AI can simulate these moments and they can simulate emotions, they can do all that stuff. But, the thing I keep explaining to people is AI will not show up in those moments, right? AI is not going to go to your kid's soccer game. It's not going to show up at a funeral. It's not going to go to a birthday party. It's not going to barbecue with you in your kitchen over a couple of beers, right? And these are the moments that really create connection more so than, any simulated environment, right? Now, you could say, well, a call center employee is not going to go to your kid's birthday party and all this stuff. So, but the point is, I think we just really got to think about it in that context of, what is real, what feels real. AI is going to continue to help us with transactional volumes of things and, simulated environments, and maybe get you to hook on to something because it's interesting to you, right? Because of that specific ICP. AI is not going to build a relationship that's meaningful with Shawn over time, in a way that is this human connection and interaction. I mean, we our interactions go well beyond, what we did as in this brand strategy stuff in corporate. It's because we've connected on a way that was beyond that. So I just think of, it's not anything I'm saying that's like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way. But it's so important as a marketer, and not even as a marketer, just as a marketer, as an operations, as a business owner, you know, as AI becomes more front and center, we constantly have to remind ourselves that this does not replace human connection. In fact, human connection becomes even more important. And so, that's really what I find super interesting about this. So to tie it back to what you were saying about marketing versus operations versus, these different parts of the business. Yes, AI is going to be able to connect the dots through these scenarios, but it's never going to replace the way a customer feels. Maya Angelou would say it all the time in brand, it's about how you make people feel. It's never going to be able to replace that. I mean, to some extent, simulate it. You talk to AI, it's like, hey, what should I do about this? Tell you some ideas, but it's never going to be, hey, we're out playing golf. I'm saying, hey, dude, I'm struggling with this. This is hard for me, and you're telling me, hey, this is my experience. That's not going to be replaced anytime soon, in my opinion.
You're totally right. It's interesting because as marketers, it's something that I kind of laugh at, but we're contributing to this problem of AI fatigue, right? There- there's few people that you would ask if there's an AI bubble that would say no. It's just what's the magnitude of the bubble, how much is actually real and how much is bubble, right? But there's a bubble, and marketers contribute to that because product marketers especially are just slapping AI on everything. There are products that have been out there using machine learning of some sort for years and years and years. Now all of a sudden it's relabeled, rebranded as being AI. And so they think that that's what the audience wants to hear and then what the market wants to hear. But I think there's already fatigue. And because everyone is now saying, well, we're AI too, you're not differentiating, you're just contributing to the noise. And so I think you're going to start to see, and already a pendulum swing towards human authenticity. And the example that I was going to give you is iHeartRadio. Uh, I listen to several iHeartRadio podcasts, and they have like a little sonic branding element that they do. This woman with a very pleasant voice says iHeartMedia, and now after that, I noticed the tagline extends and says guaranteed human or something to that effect,
Oh,
right?
interesting. I hadn't heard that. Huh. Wow.
Yeah. So they're already capitalizing on that swing back of people getting a little bit tired of hearing about AI and maybe a little bit wary of AI and AI generated content as they should be.
Yeah.
But
Man, it's so true. I've been some advisory and investment circles, and I was actually talking to a guy, good buddy of mine who runs a fund, and he said, we've gotten to the point now, whereas if you start your pitch with AI, like we're an AI company that does ... we're like shutting the conversation down immediately. It's become, tell us this problem you're solving, and if you want to further along in the conversation, talk about how you're incorporating AI into solving that problem. So, but that's always been the case. I think, especially around investment, you always start with the problem. You always start with, hey, this is the problem. Here's how I'm solving it. AI, by introducing anything on the front end, hey, we're an AI company, it's sort of become uh, completely meaningless at this point. So,
Yeah, your AI is potentially creating problems as well, not just solving problems. And so I
right.
don't know if that's the foot to lead with necessarily. But you said a marketing term earlier, ICP. And I think it's worth just explaining to the audience what that is. So that's your ideal customer profile, right? That's what does a great customer look like, that our messaging, our offering, our value proposition is really going to resonate with those people for whatever reasons, right? And so marketing does, especially brand marketers, we spend a lot of time trying to understand how to position us to an ICP. And I think that this is a great time to turn towards collaboration between the marketing organization within a company and the IT organization within a company, or the contact center CX organization, because it it's important when you're deploying, especially like a customer facing or market facing AI, something in the contact center, for example, that we were talking about. Important that you understand who are the people that are calling into the contact center and why are they calling in. And so part of the process, part of the discovery process of scoping out an AI project should really involve, obviously, a lot of stakeholders within the organization, but marketing needs to be a key one because of the impacts on the brand.
Mhm.
There's opportunity with the brand. There's risk to the brand. If, the classic example being the thing that happened with, which I can't remember which airline it was, but Air Canada maybe.
Oh,
And,
okay. Yeah.
someone asked an AI about the bereavement policy, and it's like, yeah, we'll pay you back. And then they contacted a live person after the fact and they said, oh, no, that's not a real policy. And then they got sued because they refused to pay back the whatever $800 that the ticket cost. And it cost them untold money in damage to the
Yeah.
brand and
To
brand
the
equity and trust, right? So maybe talk to me, just because I think you have a unique perspective in that you come from the space, the technology provider space. You've dealt with a lot of the end user customers, the buyers, the ICPs, for and the buying personas for those companies. And obviously, you know a lot about AI and brands. So maybe just talk about the importance of marketing and IT, or contact center organizations collaborating with each other. What role can marketing play in AI projects?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So ICP, as we define it, has shifted so much since AI became sort of mainstream. To your point, it's been around forever, especially as it relates to product positioning. I mean, you look back to Amazon, and they've been doing this for forever, right? Going way back. Um, but until it reached prevalence, and in the last few years, the ICP has been shifting. So it used to be, as you recall, we would have pretty broad segments, and especially as it relates to these larger service providers, our segments could be like, you know, employee based, or so we were doing mostly business B2B at that point, but it could be all the way from ranging from this company has 10 to 99 employees, and this company has 100 to 1,000 employees, and this company. And so we're marketing to these segments, right? And so you're looking at that going, okay, well, I mean, shoot, 10 to 99 employees, that could be the difference between a very small company that's, working out of somebody's garage, doing, wooden toys, all the way up to, a massive company with 100 people, and maybe the 100 people are warehouse distribution employees, but they've got, so it, I think where ICP and segmentation have driven with AI is all of a sudden, B2B. In fact, it was interesting. We would interview people, and in some ways I would start looking at marketers that weren't B2B. And they would come to me and say, hey, I know I'm applying for this job. I'm mostly B2C, but, business to consumer, but, I know this is a B2B job. And I'd say, well, don't discount yourself yet, because candidly, I'm really interested in talking to B2C because our business B2B is becoming more B2C all the time, right? We're starting to talk to individuals, and our ideal customer profile is it used to be, hey, we're looking at a CEO of a tech company, or we're looking at, a CFO, or this is a story we're trying to tell this person. Now I'm trying to tell a story to Shawn, a chief marketing officer, at Amplex. And here's the thing: Shawn lives here. This is what Shawn likes. This is so our ICPs are becoming smaller, and AI is helping us, tell that story better, and directionally give us more information that helps us tell those stories better. And so then to bring it, full circle to your question, um, this is important information for the whole company to understand. So the more you can pass that to your support team, I mean, you were talking about, in telecom omni-channel experiences using AI and kind of preemptively understanding what a customer's going to do or need or say before they say it. Well, you've got all these, interactions through your app, through your web, through maybe, a customer interaction over the phone. All of this becomes super important. And candidly, right now, I mean, and it's probably beyond this now, 80% of calls coming in, they already know what the call's probably going to be about. I mean, I mean, it may even be higher than that now based on the conversations with your, UCaaS, CCaaS providers. It's, um, it's, it's incredible preemptively how we can, operationally guide these calls into the right hands. So that's just one use case, but it's a really, really great one, because it's helping us solve these problems much faster than we used to be able to do, and save a ton of time and money along with it.
Yeah, I think it's such an important point that marketing generates a ton of data about your customers, the market, and it that data can enrich any aspect of any AI project, right? We talk a lot about in contact centers when we're selling them AI. We talk a lot about how the conversations and the interactions that they're having through their customer support channels are a huge source of untapped data. And so, one of the use cases for AI in marketing in that context is mining that data, those calls, using AI to pick up sentiment, to flag keywords as a way to help drive marketing strategy and brand strategy, product development and feature development, uncover new product opportunities, gaps in the market, uncover insights about your competition, and all of that can feed marketing. But it goes the other way as well. I mean, Amplix is maybe a little bit of a different example because we don't have a contact center in the traditional sense that we don't have we've got customer or client support specialists, but they're dedicated. It's not like a call center environment. But even still, we might get in the order of 1,000 calls,
Hmm.
2,000 calls, few thousand calls, whatever. But we get tens of thousands of hits a month on our website, unique users, right?
Yep.
So we're driving a lot of traffic, and all of those interactions throughout our entire digital footprint are being recorded and tracked. And we do it. We have a very solid privacy policy. We're compliant with everything, but we're collecting that data, and that data is very usable for other areas of the organization, not just.
Yep. Well, and it should, I mean, and I'm sure it is for Amplex. It really drives your content strategy on the web and other things, because it used to be, well, put an FAQ up there, we'll answer some questions that we're getting a lot. Now it's about interactive videos. Now it's about content on demand. It's a bunch of other things, that are really helping, with those interactions. And, I think it's really interesting too. One of the things that makes me laugh as I stand up more, just very simple chat agents with customers, right? Stuff that, is become sort of table stakes for technology companies, but still isn't necessarily for non-tech companies. What's wild is that, you know, users still feel like when they're talking to a chat agent that it's like that nobody's looking. It's funny, like you'll see these interactions and the things that people are typing. It almost reminds me of, early web days, and this still happens where you'll have somebody on Google like, "Hey, how do I, hide a dead body or something?" And it's just like, hold on, dude, like this is a problem, right? So I think that that what's really cool is, to your point, they're telling you exactly what they need, and unfortunately, too many times businesses are completely ignoring all that information, and they're not using it to their benefit, not only from a marketing perspective, but to your point, that's not getting back to operations, that's not getting back to retention, that's not even getting back to sales, for crying out loud. And candidly, I know I have colleagues that may be watching, as former colleagues, we were guilty of some of that, right? We weren't using our data the way that we should have been all the time. And I'm saying that as the marketing leader for that, environment. Hindsight, you look back and say, oh wow, we could have been doing better. But yeah, it's really interesting how valuable that information is. And if you're not leveraging it, well, I mean, most fundamental piece, guess what? Your competition definitely is. So you're already, a couple steps behind.
Yeah, it's a huge gap, right? I mean, I think this is broader than just a marketing discussion too. I think organizations are still struggling with all of the data that they have, and that data is living in different silos. And is that data ready for AI, right? So data is a big challenge and a big problem, and an untapped resources in a lot of organizations. But the good thing is that there's a lot of motion towards using that data, and leveraging AI with that data. We've got a couple of we've got a podcast and a webinar coming up with this guy Scott Weiner from New Eon, and he's an AI expert. The guy addresses Congress regularly and helps them develop policy, which um, is a challenge, right? Because they don't want much of an AI policy right now. But a lot of the Congress people that he deals with are trying to learn as much as they can about it. But one of the questions that I asked him in some prep calls for these conversations I'm about to have with him is, looking back in 2025, we had a podcast and I asked him for predictions, and he predicted the rise of agentic AI. And I said, now looking back at 2025, what actually happened and how did your predictions match up? And on the agentic AI front, what he's seeing, and I think we see it too, is there's a rapid increase in adoption. People are getting off of the starting line now. And we weren't there in 2024. 2024, we heard a lot about the board says we need to do AI, or I'm being pushed for AI from marketing or whoever, right? Or even IT saying we're looking at AI to solve problems or to create cost efficiencies. But the conversations were around strategy and policy and governance and security. Obviously, those conversations still are there, but it seems like the Overton window has moved slightly. And so now the conversations are a little bit more about piloting and pilot to scale and things like that. So, and you said something interesting when we had our prep call for this as well, which was English is the new coding language, right? So
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
let's,
When actually, I as much as I'd love to take credit for that, there's a gentleman, Andre Karpathy, he was a big time AI expert at Tesla and OpenAI, and he's been in this since the beginning. And I think he tweeted it like a few years ago. It might have been 23, where he said something to the effect, "Hottest new programming language is English." And then he gave a really great keynote to Y Combinator. It was an AI startup group. I think it was earlier this year, and he was just going through software 1.0, how it was sort of computer and code, and this is driving what computers and mainframes and things did. Software 2.0 was sort of taking that code and then creating neural networks and really putting weighting on code and neural networks, and how does that all come together, right? And create something bigger than than the code itself. And then he's really saying AI and large language models are really the software 3.0. And what's driving that is conversations, which is crazy because, all these things we're talking about and what I love about what you said here in 25 and now driving into 26. This is accessible to everybody. Like what shocked me, I think, once I got out on my own is how easy it was to build things. So I started, just going, okay, I need to sharpen my tool, belt around, web development and things like that. Well, then all of a sudden, I'm coding pretty advanced stuff for people. And when I say coding, a lot of it's, you know, just using my language, my voice to code this. But what I've and no, again, for my coder friends out there, trust me, we've had many conversations about we'll need them and they understand, coding much better than I do. But the point is we can go solve these problems. And so while they may have the coding knowledge, I've got the operational and business knowledge to fix this stuff. And so quickly, way faster than we could have ever created solutions to these problems before, I can go solve them on my own. So before I used to search for a SaaS application for months. I put here's my requirements. I got this. So I get all the way down to the end of this, process of looking for a SaaS application only to find out, hey, you know what? It does everything I need except for two things. Guess what? Those two things are probably the two most important things that I need, right? So then I'm back to the drawing board of trying to find a new SaaS application, and so what's been really incredible is going and building something bespoke for myself or my business or for my customer where, I mean, look, most of this stuff exists. Personalization around e-commerce has been around forever, dynamic pricing. You're having even the grocery stores doing it right now. This is all AI driven. You can look at, predictive cross-selling and retention. This is stuff that's been going on for a very long time. However, it's not uniquely tailored to your business or your industry especially if you're a small or medium-sized company, right? So now with English being the, newest coding language, if you will, and you can use, platforms like V0 or Lovable or some of these others, there's a bunch of them, to not only build out your front end from a marketing perspective, but your back end now and tie those together. So now you've got access to great things like Firebase or Superbase or whatever. You can pull all this data in and then start creating these front ends for not only your customers, but for your operations. This stuff just gets crazy. I mean, I think I told you, Shawn, I was telling my son, who's 19 and in college now, I said, you're going to grow up in an environment where when you need something, you just spin it up like on demand. You're like, hey, I really want an app that does this. I want, and you spin it up and not only you're going to grow up there, it's here right now. Now, is it the best, cleanest code, today? No, it's not. However, it will be. It will be very, and you'll be able to pull that stuff together. Anyway, I get fired up about this stuff. I don't know if you can tell, but this is really exciting times for us to be adopting some of this technology.
Well, it kind of makes me think of, again, in the CX space and how you can deflect certain transactional calls to the AI to allow your contact center agents to be focused on more complex calls and solving more complex problems. And there's a lot of benefits to that in terms of employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction, right? It's a good thing. But it makes me think that businesses might have more scale in their development, right? Because they can deflect low level code writing to the AI, focus the devs that they're paying for, the humans, on the more complex, challenging, or creative solutions that need to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, that's such a great, scenario for us to be in right now, because then you're optimizing. Again, it goes back to the moments, right? Those are the moments that really matter. If I'm trying to pay my bill or whatever, I don't care. I won't even think about it, right? But man, when I'm fired up or I've got an outage and something happened because, I needed to get a hold of emergency services, or it was my daughter's wedding, or something else happened and I couldn't get what I needed in that moment because now it's affecting me as an individual and my reputation or my family, or man, then I want to talk to the top tier, engineer, the top tier person, whoever that is. I need to be able to get direct access to them. And those are the moments that really drive brand. When we were talking about brand, back when we were working on that project together, so much of it is emotional, but so much of it is like, you have to own those moments. You have to. It's like you can do the best brand campaign ever. If you don't own that moment, none of the campaigns are going to make any difference. We don't just, earn brownie points by doing campaigns. We earn those and, that reputation and that feeling through those moments. So,
Yeah, I think also leveraging some of marketing's data that we've collected on customers and the market in the AI models can help you anticipate those moments and anticipate what type of interaction that person needs in that moment, right? I mean, just thinking about kind of generational differences in how people adopt technology or use technology, you've got a whole generation right below us that they don't really necessarily want to talk to people. And you have a generation that's above us that they're not maybe, generally speaking, as savvy and maybe not as interested in engaging with an AI when they call into a contact center, right? So we've got demographic data. That demographic data can be leveraged to anticipate how does that person want to have an interaction with us, and then you can preemptively create that interaction, create that moment, and give them the opportunity to go a different place if needed when you're having an interaction with you. But just by virtue of starting the engagement the way that you anticipate they want that engagement to go, you're already meeting their needs and creating a smoother, less friction in their interaction and a better customer experience.
it's so true. And I mean, I think about, with our AI voice agents, they can speak in essentially any language, 300 plus languages. So you think about brand and about how you're meeting the customer in their point of need. Well, I mean, one of the most fundamental is my language. Like if I call you and I can't, get answers in my own language, that creates a tension point right there, right? Where it's like, here, I'm paying you money. I'm a customer. However, you can't even interface with me in my own language. So this is where, you know, is is chatting with a bot or an agent, AI agent, a great brand play all the time? No, not necessarily. However, if I can interface with an AI agent, whether via voice or via chat, on your website in my own language, man, I mean, that's way better than not being able to interface with anything or anybody at all. Right. So I think it's good. And I mean, I love this conversation around this becomes deeply personal, right? So while some people, you know, maybe it's generational. I want to talk to somebody versus, hey, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't care. Or maybe it's a language barrier. Maybe it's something else. Beyond, also these life moments. Like it's cool to get a hey, happy birthday email from, a service provider, but these are also there's other moments that are really critical too in our lives that, that AI can help us just remember those and then reach out and do something, really fantastic for people when they're in those moments. So yeah, I think, we're just scratching the surface. It's like we are like, you know, just at the beginning stages of this. And I think where I'm most excited about this going is us being able to not just chat with a large language model and say, hey, use it like a search engine, but it's when we really start to create. I know we talked about this too, Shawn, that, this is really going to come down to creators versus consumers. And as long as we are driving the creation and we're building things, I think we're on the winning side of that equation. right? The more as companies we just consume, and we aren't thinking about how do we create, how do we build, how do we renew these experiences for ourselves and for our customers. If you're not on that side of the equation, then I think you're in trouble, honestly. And so I think that conversation becomes pretty simple of like, are you a company that's constantly creating? Or are you a company that's consuming and expecting, people to just come and buy from you because you happen to be the best today? I don't know. It's a it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and leveraging AI to code your own custom applications, I think, is another step towards democratization of leveraging data in these more sophisticated use cases, right? Like from a marketing perspective, at least, something like predictive analytics is expensive, right? I remember I worked on a project, and this is probably 10 years ago. And I worked on a project and we wanted to tie into a predictive analytics platform. And the license cost for that was like $200,000 in a decade ago, right? And that doesn't even include all of the costs for the developers to do the integration and to write customize the code and things, right? So that's out of reach for a lot of organizations. But now you might be able to do that yourself in house and have a platform that works for your needs and gives you those kind of capabilities for a lot less cost. And that makes it accessible to smaller businesses.
That's exactly right. And you know, just bringing it back to brand, I worked with some very, very large brand agencies, as you know, and, seven figures for brand studies and things like that. And, when you really look at what they're working or what they're doing, yes, there's some great expertise there. And so I'm not trying to discount what they do, anything like. However, a lot of it is research driven. A lot of it is, hey, I'm going to reach out to stakeholders, both employees, customers, leadership, former customers, all these things, and say, hey, what really drove your relationship with this brand? What's your feeling? Well, a lot of that now can be automated through. I went and built. This has been probably 6, 7 months ago, but built a brand app that basically does all this for you, right? And it goes and collects information. It goes and emails people, brings it back, analyzes it, pulls it all together. And, it didn't take me very long to build that app. Right. And so it's something that democratizing is a perfect word for it, because, I'm not a, you know, massive brand agency out of Chicago or New York. I have a very, very small, agency in Southern California. And yet I can build a tool that can, do all this automatically on my own for companies. And so it brings it all home. It makes it more achievable. Um, and this is all the same stuff that small companies need. They just don't have the resources and specifically the financial backing to be able to pull some of this stuff off. But ultimately, it's not necessarily that, that these larger companies are doing anything that is, far outside of what you can do on your own. It's just they have the resources and the people that know how to do it.
Percent. Which leads me to a question that I wanted to ask you, and it's going to sound like stoner talk a little bit, but can AI actually be creative, right? So I took a note. My working definition, this is not from AI. This is not from Merriam-Webster dictionary. This is my definition of creativity is the ability to apply knowledge from disparate domains and synthesize them into new novel ideas. Okay.
Okay.
So to argue against
We have
AI,
the Joe Rogan podcast, by the way. Just kidding.
yeah, I wish I had
We're on this rock that
audience,
spins
but
around a flaming sun. Yeah, no, that's cool. I like it. I like
I do
that.
have I have the haircut, but so so to argue against creativity in AI, I feel like all it's ever doing is repurposing, repackaging, recombining things that already exist, right? Is it ever really synthesizing something completely new? Is it capable of doing that? What do you think?
Um, Today, I don't think so. I think I feel like it is basically taking a whole bunch of data, crunching it and repurposing it in a way that maybe makes it simpler or maybe more poignant for the audience. However, I think, one of the things I would maybe challenge on that question is, are humans truly creative? I think it was Mark Twain said there's really nothing new, nothing's ever really a new idea. It's just a regurgitation of an old idea. And
Famous line being all art is derivative, right?
right, yeah, good point. And plagiarism is the sincerest form of flattery, right? So I wonder, it's a great question, but I wonder as humans, if, even if we truly create, um, I think to an extent there is. I mean, I look at certain people and I'm like, I don't know how you could derive that from a series of other incidents. It's just brilliance. I don't know. But I do feel like AI uh, just does it so quickly is what was shock. I mean, I remember, thinking for a very long time, man, I would love to get access to some of these AI models to really, I mean, this goes back to IBM Watson, 10 years, 15, maybe 15 years ago, thinking about how cool it would be to be able to interface with IBM Watson and really just see how it processes thought, right? And so when OpenAI released, I think it was November 22, something like that, when they first released the prompt, or their ability to interface with that prompt, and it was just shocking to see that how quickly it would you know would answer, but also go beyond your simple answers. So I don't know. I think I guess my short answer is no. I don't think it can today. I do think with AGI and some of the other things, as it starts to connect these dots, um, I don't know. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how it comes up with um, new ideas, or it's creative, the creative side of things.
I guess it's worth asking too. When is pure creativity that important? Is it if it can approximate creativity close enough?
Yeah.
Um, does it matter really? I
Right.
mean,
Well, I mean, who's the judge of creativity, right?
right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Um,
But in order to ensure my job for the next decade, I'm going to argue that it's critical that a human being be part of the creative process.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we're all in that boat, right? I think, as I watch, some of these layoffs occurring and whatnot, and candidly, some of my very good friends have been impacted. You know, I do I do worry about that, and I think some of the heads of thought leadership on AI, and I'm sure like you'll be talking to one here soon. It is an interesting debate around how do we give humans, as AI does take over some of these things, how do we continue to have purpose, right? What is the purpose before it was creating something? My hope is that our purpose as humans becomes more about human interaction and real connection and real moments, um, than about having meetings, or sitting in front of PowerPoint, or doing. I mean, kind of come full circle to where I started here. I'm hopeful that when we start looking at how AI is taking care of these, blocking, tackling, doing all that stuff. Fun, we can really start connecting. It means that we go to, our kids' sporting events more. It means that we do have time to grab lunch together. It means that we have, the opportunity to really connect so that when I walk past you in the hallway and I say, "Hey, Shawn, how's your day?" And you go, "Great. How's yours?" "Great. Cool." We move on. It's like, "No, really, man. Like, how is your day? How are you doing?" And so I think that the real power here, if it's done correctly, it actually gives us more purpose as humans and gives us more connection as humans. And that becomes the real value in the brand. And so for some people that sounds amazing. For others, that's kind of scary. It's a scary, sort of terrifying thing. Um, but I think that, in my ideal scenario, that's really what AI paves the way to is giving us the ability to be more creative, you know, build things on demand, and then have that time to reconnect with humans.
It, it's a beautifully optimistic sentiment, and I share that same hope. But technology throughout the years has always come with the promise of taking some of the load off of human beings. And so if you go back to, the 40s and 50s, and, with industrialization start and technology starting to help workers be more productive and produce more than just a person without, industrial means behind them, that really started to ramp up. So there was a time where people thought that by now we'd be working 10 hours a week
Right.
and technology would be taking the rest of it, right? But we're working more now than ever. And so I don't know, it just seems like part of the human condition that, or maybe it's a Western thing. I really don't know, like a cultural thing, but it seems like anytime we get something that allows us to be more productive, we use it for the means of creating more things and not creating more time necessarily.
Yes.
And something else that you made me think of is, it's a little scary, but there is a loneliness epidemic right now,
Big time.
and science has found that loneliness is as big of a killer of people as smoking cigarettes.
Mm,
And so you're starting to see that Gen Z is using AI primarily for companionship,
yeah, I've seen that.
and which I think is good in the sense that they're seeking companionship in a vacuum of loneliness, right? But um, it's not real connection. And we're social creatures and we really need that human connection, especially when loneliness is not having connection when you want it. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I don't need people," and they're really good, and that's fine. That's not loneliness. If you're someone that is introverted, you keep to yourself. But if you're someone that is craving that connection and you can't get it, that's loneliness. And so, um, I do hope that it can create the opportunity for us to have more human connection. But what I also hope is that it doesn't become a shortcut
Yes.
to
Uh,
approximating human connection, right?
which, candidly, the double-edged sword, is what I'm actually more worried about happening. I see this, got, AI integrated in my car now and everything else. And, it gives you that opportunity to create, your best friend in a virtual space, your virtual, AI best friend. Um, and, I think that that's very dangerous. Having said that, there's also scenarios where I think it does make sense because you feel like you can tell this virtual, Asian anything. Um, but I think that, I often hear people say, especially as it relates to, our work, you know, AI is not going to take your job, but somebody using AI will, right? And I hear it all the time. And I got to tell you, I don't agree with it because I think that most of the people using AI, depending on how you're using it, it's actually going to become more of a problem for you then it's going to help you. And the reason I say that is because, in fact, I'm trying to remember, a guy who said, that your biggest task in the next 5 years, or your biggest charter in the next 5 years, is not to become a slave to AI, to not have it write your papers for you, do your work for you. You have to use AI as a tool. You have to use it at, hey, I'm your boss. I'm, guiding you, and you're helping me go faster. You're helping me create. And there was a person recently who said, in fact, I stopped saying to AI, tell me your opinion. Tell me what you think. You are the expert. You are this, you're that. And he said, and I shifted that not only from the AI's perspective, but for my own, of saying, now talk to me about, you know, you actually don't exist, right? AI, there is no you in AI. It's not like this is a person who's sitting there going, yeah, this is a computer. And you say, so here's what I need from a perspective of this IPC from Shawn at Amplix. I need to know, what is this person thinking, this. So you're telling it its persona, and this is part of prompting, right? I don't think prompting's come such a long way. You no longer have to be like, you are a, executive at a marketing agency. No, you just say, look, I need to know what this group is thinking. I need to know what this person is thinking. I don't really care what you're thinking, because you're not, you are a computer. So I think that helps also us, keep it like this is a relationship between, a machine and a human. This is not a human to human relationship, right? And so I think that is important to think about as you interface with AI. It's just another tool, um, and a very powerful tool at that. But I think there will be a problem with people mistaking that for a human relationship, by all means.
I totally agree. But a second problem in the scenario that you just described is, with most tools, you need competency to be able to use that tool effectively. And with AI, you don't necessarily, because it's built to be very approachable and easy to use, and to be flattering to you, right? So,
Yeah,
um,
overly.
and overly right. And I think that if you don't know enough about the subject that you're asking AI about, it's very easy to get misled, or to fall for a hallucination, or to not understand exactly the context. And there's this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you have this illusion of competency. You're so incompetent about something that you don't even know how incompetent you are, or
Sure.
so ignorant or uneducated about a topic that you don't even realize what you don't know, right? It's that famous thing. There's known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns, right? And if you're just using chat GPT or whatever AI model about a topic that you don't really know anything about, and you've got no grounding or context, it could tell you anything, and
That's
you would
true.
just totally fall for it. And that's scary. You're already seeing some scenarios where it's cited case law, and that's ended up in court proceedings, and a competent judge realized that that wasn't a thing that it was referencing, right? So it's something that I think people have to be very cautious about how they use it as a tool, because it's incredibly powerful. But um, it's like using a supercar or a hypercar that's high horsepower, rear wheel drive, a Bugatti Chiron, uh, 1800 horsepower rear wheel drive, and not using the launch control or the traction control. You're spinning out, man. You're going to hit a tree. There's
That's
no
right.
question, right? You need that guardrail of traction control to help you use that tool in the way that you want to use it.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah, because again, I know so many times where I'll be interfacing with a model, and it's interesting. It's not like, Chat GPT or Gemini or Grok, or it's not like one of them is always right. In fact, they're always wrong. And so you'll be asking them about something that is a little bit more technical, and they'll say something and spit it out as fact. And it's like, no, it's absolutely unequivocally incorrect. And I always love the response on that, because it's like, oh yeah, you know what? You're right. It's wrong. Here's the
You're
right.
that, yeah.
I I love the response on that, because without fail, it's not like, oh, let me check that, or maybe, oh, here's the nuanced version of why I said it. It's like, no, you're right, I'm wrong. Here you go. Here's the real answer. So yeah, it's got a long way to go, and that's why we got to be very careful about just unleashing it on our customers and saying, you know, yeah, go at it. So, I mean, and that's why we train the knowledge base, that there's a lot of stuff around there where, you can prevent that from happening. But for sure, it's a thing, no
Yeah, I
doubt.
think in an enterprise setting, you've got a lot more control over the inputs that it's getting, and and the integrity of the data that you're training it on.
Yes.
Whereas something like ChatGPT and just kind of the open internet is, if enough people say it on the internet, it sounds true to ChatGPT, so it's not necessarily checking references as it goes, um, which is scary for all of us.
It sure is. Well, it's getting better. I mean, but yeah, I mean, even in those circles, who's to say what is accurate, what is the truth? And we've all seen that, come full front and center over the last few years. So yeah, it's exciting. I think the biggest thing though is, stay on the side of leveraging it to create. Stay on the side of building things. Get interact with, not just with the large language models. Start building apps. Start building solutions. And I'm not even saying for your business, or hey, just if you need something, at home, for instance, or you're trying to coordinate or take some data that you have and do some fun things with it. Like, you would be shocked. I always talk to people, said, have you used B0 or any of these other platforms? And they're like, I don't know. I said, you would be absolutely shocked just by typing in a few prompts what you could develop in very little time. And I think that's one of the most exciting things about where we're going next, is this, what Karpathy said is just, English is the new, programming language. It's going to change and revolutionize everything. And in fact, actually, it was interesting. Just said it the other day. I think it was maybe a few weeks ago. But he just said the same thing. He said, English is the new programming language. So this is becoming more and more of you know, a drumbeat in the industry, as far as being able to do your own development. And again, that I just want to preface this, 'cause I know I'll have some people that say, that, you know, it can't code like a real coder. You're absolutely right. 100%. Would never argue that. And that's why I think, in order to fully, and actually, Karpathy says this, he says, yes, English can code for you, but in order to really unleash software 3.0, you really have to understand 2.0 and 1.0. Your fundamentals in C++ and Python and other things, are really critical, because, to your point, Shawn, you can easily go out and buy a Bugatti and you'll crash the Bugatti into a tree, just like you will. So when you're out there developing apps, you're not just going to go develop an app in V0 and then deploy it in an enterprise environment. This is stuff that I think, you start small, start with baby steps. You code something, and then you go back and you look at the code and you say, oh, okay, this is interesting. This is using JavaScript and you React and other thing, and so you start to understand, you almost reverse engineer it, right? Okay, how did this build this? Why did it build it this way? And actually, the cool thing is, AI will tell you. It'll say, yeah, I built it this way because this is considered a best practice. Um, and then you just turn your learning on hyperdrive. I mean, it's really amazing. It's really cool. It's 26 is going to be, I mean, it's just going to be an explosive year for this kind of tech. Um, I mean, just I put it in hyperdrive, man. We're going.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I mean about competence, right? It's the famous thing about jazz. The key part of jazz is improvisation, but you can't improvise in jazz until you know how to play jazz, right? You have to learn the standards. You have to learn how the music works before you can start to go off script.
Yes. Yeah. Great analogy.
Good one to end it on then. Jared Ruth, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it. Where can people find you?
So, ripcurrentagency.com is our website. And you can find us online there. We're also, I have LinkedIn if you want to look me up there, Jared Ruth, just like it's spelled. So, I love to engage with people, even in discussions or projects or anything like that. But yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity, Shawn, and look forward to working with you and team at Amplix over the next year.
Me too. Great to see you. Good talk. Thanks.
Same. Take care.